Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report presented by Great Days Outdoors Magazine, the first podcast to bring you the local inshore, offshore, and onshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. I am Butch Theory, and I am joined today with Captain Patrick Garmison with Ugly Fishing as my co-host. How we doing today, buddy?
Man, it was quite chilly, like to the point of my fingers losing feeling and difficult to tie knots. But you know
still
what?
Look cold. You're all bundled up over there still.
I love the cold weather. I love the cold. Well, no, let me rephrase that. I love the cold weather speckled trout fishing. I hate being cold, but I mean, you got to go with what works.
Yep, no doubt.
Anyway, so. Doing well. How about you, Butch? What you been up to?
Man, can't complain. Had a good Thanksgiving. Just plugging along, man. I have not been able to go fishing near as much as I would like. Some wild weather and just a lot going on. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get out. I was supposed to go with Captain Richard a couple of days last week, and those got axed. So I'll get out there and get back after them soon. Everything I've been seeing is lined up perfect. Sounds like it's on fire pretty much everywhere, correct?
There's been a lot of good fishing there's been way more good days of fishing since October 1st than bad days. So I mean, we're talking about 2 months straight of either good to exceptionally good fishing. So
that's good. That's a good news.
It's been fun. Mobile Bay's been a good place to be fishing.
Good, man. Well, we got a great report today for you guys. We're going to head on down to Gulf Shores, Orange Beach area. We got a new offshore contributor I'm excited to hear from. He's on the Gulf Rebel out of that area. It's Kendall. And we'll talk to him. We'll talk to Captain Bobby Abrascato. We'll talk to Captain Dusty Hayes and see what he's been over there. I think he's been doing a little surf fishing, a little bit of that inshore fishing over there on the east side. We are going to head down to Spanish Fort. We have a special guest this week. We're going to talk to Miss Laura. She's the owner-operator at Advanced Transmission over there. Before we head there, we got to get this week's sponsor. This week's show is brought to us by CCA Alabama, a great way to support conservation projects like the Claude Petite Flounder and Speckled Trout Hatchery in the University of South Alabama Cobia Tagging Project is through the purchase of a distinctive CCA Alabama saltwater fishing license plate. You guys head over to Alabama Department of Revenue's distinctive license plate page at revenue.alabama.gov to get yours. All right, Patrick, let's head on down to Spanish Fort and see what Miss Laura Wilson, owner-operator of Advanced Transmissions, doing. Welcome to the show, Miss Laura. How are you?
Well, thank you, guys. I am doing absolutely fabulous today. The weather is nice. It's nice and cool, so it's a perfect day.
It is. It is a beautiful day outside. I'm over here looking over Fowl River. It is beautiful. The wind's kind of slacked off a little bit finally. Captain Patrick was whining about his numb hands earlier. He had a fishing trip this morning. I bet there was ice on the deck this morning, wasn't there, buddy?
Hey, it was not frozen when we left the dock, but it was frozen when we got to where we were fishing. So till about 7:30, almost 8 o'clock, we had ice on the front deck.
Cold.
That's die-hard fishing there.
That's
it was
right.
sketchy.
That's right. It's a cold ride to the fishing spot.
Ooh.
Well, we appreciate you guys being an awesome sponsor of the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report and Great Days Outdoors. We appreciate you as always.
Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I know Captain Patrick has a relationship with you guys. He bought a new truck recently, and he just had a couple questions to kind of get this thing rolling.
Cool.
Yes.
What you got, Pat?
So, Miss Laura, the last time I was there, I had the 07 2500, and we got it all. We got all the kinks ironed out for that thing to pull my boat. And since I was last there, I bought a 2015 Duramax. Everything seems to be working flawlessly as far as transmission is concerned, and not really exactly sure on what the service records are on the transmission. So we're talking about a 5-year-old truck with 100,000 miles on it. My plan was to get by and see y'all, but I've been fishing pretty much every day since I bought the truck. So
good.
But anyway, what's the best case scenario for me for staying out of trouble with my transmission?
Well, I thought about when I was asked to come on the show, I thought about the listeners may be thinking, well, what does transmission have to do with fishing? Well, like you said, Patrick, it has a lot to do with fishing. And that is when it comes to towing your boat. So when towing a boat, the transmission is the big deal, gets overheated and has problems. Now, the vehicle that you brought previously was a different type of transmission than what you have in this Duramax. So the Duramax has an Allison transmission in it, which is one of GM's largest transmissions that they have. And I tell you, Patrick, that thing is tough. I mean, you can hardly shoot it to kill it, on those Allisons. So we have very few Allisons only because they're just really good transmissions. We very seldom have problems. Now, most people that have the Allisons in the 25 and 3500 series heavy duty vehicles, they normally do keep them serviced and maintained because normally they are workhorses. Those big trucks are designed to be really hard workers. So it is important that you keep it serviced. We say that servicing a transmission, we would say to, you always hear people say they're going to flush it. Well, at transmission shops, they don't flush transmissions. We flush the toilet. So you only service them on domestics. You take the pan off, you replace the filter because it's kind of like a sock that catches normal wear and tear material that any machinery is going to make. So you've got to take that off and service it and replace that filter. So most transmissions are anywhere from 30, 50, 75,000 miles before you would service. So it's according to what type of fluid it takes. So the older ones have like Dex 6, Dex 5 fluid. The newer ones are going to have a Dex 6, like what yours has. In that Allison transmission, you're going to have a Dex 6, which has a modifier in it, a synthetic type fluid. Let's just say that. So it lasts longer. The viscosity is better. It just lasts longer. So I would say on that one, at least 50,000 miles, especially if you're going to use it for towing, towing a boat or mountainous terrain or things like that. Definitely at 50,000 miles, or, at least have it checked once a year and have it serviced at least 50,000 miles.
Okay. We're talking about boats, Miss Laura, but don't forget about our hunters. We have a ton of, that are anglers and hunters, and these guys are pulling tractors and UTVs and anything they can fit on their trailers up to the hunting camp too. So it's a great time for that as well. Yes.
Patrick, when you mentioned that you bought the 2500, there are some transmissions that some of the manufacturers are having a really, really bad problem with. So like you, we traded for a 2500 with the Allison. Of course, we hunt and fish and all that kind of good stuff ourselves. And so up to that hunting camp, here recently, everybody's towing. You see them towing their tractors to plant. Oh, yeah. Hopefully most people's planted and got things done. But, for a few months before before hunting, you're going to be planting and pulling tons of lime, sometimes 10,000 pounds of lime. And you've got to have a vehicle that can do that because not all vehicles can pull those kind of loads.
For sure. Well, what are some signs that your transmission needs to be serviced, and I guess B, kind of it's going out? I guess that's kind of a two-part question, but what do you need to look for?
Right. Well, remember, Butch, that servicing a transmission will not ever fix the transmission unless it's low on fluid. Okay. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people think, I'll just have my transmission serviced and it'll fix it. Well, that's not true. What you need to do is have it serviced on a regular basis just for maintenance. But some signs that your fluid needs to be serviced is if you pull the stick. Now, of course, when you're checking the fluid in transmission, you always check the fluid with the engine running, okay? And put it in park, except if you've got a Dodge, it has to be in neutral. But you put it in park and you pull the stick and check it and make sure it's within the hash marks that's on the stick. And you're going to look at the fluid to see if the fluid is a red translucent color. So it needs to be really clear, but it's red, but it's a clear red. If it's discolored in any way, that's a sign that the fluid is breaking down. That's why they put the red dye color in there.
Gotcha.
So that you can tell if it's breaking down. So, you should always check your fluid just like you would check your oil, on a regular basis to see. And so the fluid breaking down is one thing, and that's by the color that you would know, and then by the mileage.
All right, Miss Laura. My relationship with you has gone through several different trucks. My original truck that brought me into your shop was a 2001 1500 Silverado. When y'all went through my transmission, you told me that there were some errors from the manufacturer that y'all were able to fix. Can you elaborate on what that was that y'all were able to fix on my truck in particular, and and it sounded like that's something that's common in a lot of manufacturers. So tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Well, Patrick, on your particular one, I believe that, I have to refresh my memory, but I believe it's the 4L60E, which is in a GM. And we do quite a few modifications on those, which we put a heavy duty converter. We also rebuild the valve body because it has weak points. And then we also put the 3/4 clutch pack in there, which is the most common thing to burn out, especially when you're towing, like with your boats or tractors for hunters and things like that. That's the number one cause for burnout. So we modify that and update it to have a better part, I guess you would say, in the 3/4 clutch pack.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we do that quite often. And, towing, when you tow something, everybody knows you have to have, proper braking and weight distribution and the mirrors and those kind of things. But, the transmission is the main thing when you're towing. So you really need to know your tow capacities. You can call your manufacturer, look in your owner's manual. You need to make sure that your radiator or cooling system is cooling well, because that transmission cools from the radiator. And so if your radiator is low or something, or having problems or got a hole in it, you could be causing problems for your transmission really quick. So you can also put an external transmission cooler, which is what we did with yours, Patrick.
Yes, ma'am.
We bypassed the radiator completely and put its own cooling system on the front, allowing the transmission to have its own cooling, not dependent on the engine if it were to run hot. So that's a common thing that you have when people tow, is that it just gets so hot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like the way to go there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now, one thing when you were saying about the updates that we do to make them heavy duty is the difference between rebuilding a transmission and replacing it. Rebuilding the transmission allows you to make things better than just a parts replacement. Okay. So you can modify and make them better. And it's normally, even with modifications, making it better is cheaper than just replacing the transmission. So a lot of manufacturers or dealerships do not rebuild transmissions. You'd have to go to a transmission shop. Other than that, they just replace the whole transmission. It doesn't matter what's wrong with it. If it's got a sensor bad, they're going to replace the whole transmission. So you should be seeking out a transmission shop to see whether or not it is necessary to replace it or whether it can be repaired.
That's great.
Yep, that's really good stuff, Miss Laura. We appreciate you being on the show, and I feel like I just got schooled in transmission. You're incredibly knowledgeable. That's awesome. If folks want to get up with you and just come in, and it sounds like they just need to really, if they tow a lot, just come in and get it checked out. Just get it A to Z.
Absolutely. We do an inspection, and we check the whole vehicle, because so many things affect the transmission. Battery charging systems affect it, cooling systems. So a lot of electronic problems. It's not even the transmission at all. So yeah, just bring it by and let us check it. We are on Highway 31 in Spanish Fort. So you just come by. We're behind the Malbus Mall. You can also reach us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. We're on all of those social media platforms. And then, of course, you can give us a call at 251-626-6061. And then our website is advanced-transmission.com.
Awesome. We appreciate the knowledge, and we appreciate you guys being an awesome sponsor. We look forward to hearing from you next time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, Captain Patrick, we have a new captain contributing to the Offshore Report, and I'm pretty excited about it. Let's head on down to Orange Beach, Alabama, and talk to Captain Kendall Annan. He runs and works on the Gulf Rebel and the Summer Breeze out of Orange Beach. Welcome to the show, Captain Kendall. How are we doing today?
Doing pretty good. How's it going?
Man, we're doing all right. I heard you guys got out and caught some tuna fish, and I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah, we got on them. We finally caught a break in the weather and got our chance at them.
Awesome, man. Well, since this is your first time on, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation.
Fourth generation captain. Been running out of Orange Beach for a long time. We're kind of grandfathered in, so we're not out of a marina. We're kind of half-mile pass-down sportsmen. Been doing it all my life. As soon as I turned 18 on my birthday, I went to sea school, got my license, had enough sea time. And then when I turned 19, went and got my 100-ton, and the rest is history.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Nice.
So you guys do day trips, 2-day trips, tuna, snapper. What's y'all's specialty?
Yeah, we do it all. We got 2 boats down there. The Gulf Rebel's 43-foot, 6-pack. Like I said, we do 4-hour trips to 12 hours on now, all-day trips. And then the Summer Breeze is for private company trips, all day trips, the 3-day tuna trips, 4-hour trolling trips, a little bit of everything.
Yes, sir. Very familiar with both of those boats. They've been around and been killing fish for a long time.
Long time.
That's right. Well, let's get a little bit of an offshore report from you, man. Tell us a little about those tuna fishing. That was this past weekend. You guys saw a bunch of yellowfin. Just kind of walk us through it. How'd you guys catch them, and about where were you and all that?
Yeah. There's some pictures on our Facebook page, Bluewater Charter fishing page. You can go look them up. But yeah, I mean, the water was good. 15 miles, it started to clear up, and you get out 40 miles, it really gets a real clean blue. So that was exciting to see. The bait was still moving around, so we saw a lot of bait going around, flying fish, squid. So it was pretty active out there, and we stopped early. We had a light crew. A lot of guys couldn't make it, due to the COVID situation, and they were a little bit iffy on the weather. We got a little bit older gentlemen going, so we had a few back out. But yeah, we got on them. I know you're familiar with the ghetto area, but that's where we were. And drill trips had a little bit better blackfin, but I mean, we just stayed on near the rigs more, catching the yellowfin. I mean, once they got one or two of them, they rotated a few times. They didn't have enough energy to fight the blackfin, and it seemed like it was a pretty good fight on the blackfin, but they just couldn't keep up with it. So that was good to see them still biting pretty heavy. No, we chunked, live bait, trolling was good. I think we did the best on chunking. It stayed pretty consistent. It was slower than usual, but every once in a while you'd get a little flurry of them jumping around outside.
Yeah. Y'all catching those blackfin on jigs?
Yeah, diamond jigs, butterfly jigs. We got some custom hand poured jigs that my uncle actually pours and makes. So we play around with a lot of stuff jigging. But yeah, blackfin was on the jig. Probably lost a few on the jig as well. Big yellowfin. I think we went 11 for 14 on yellowfin. So
dang.
Yeah.
That's a heck of a trip. That's a lot of delicious sashimi. It makes me hungry.
Oh man, it was a lot. It was a lot of meat.
Heck yeah. Hey, well, go ahead.
Hey, Captain Kendall, so you said you were doing some chunking, some live baiting. Do you do that at the same time, or do you do some chunking and then no strikes, switch it to live bait, or vice versa? Walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, it depends on the crew. It depends on the crew and on what our charter's doing. Another thing we look at is like the current, how heavy the current's running. Sometimes if you're using lighter jigs, that tends to mess that up a little bit. But we try to do one thing or the other. It's hard to do both as far as like jigging and chunking, but you can kind of get away with the chunking and live bait. This past trip, we were live baiting on the surface more than we were down deep. Okay. And chunking deep, so we're kind of hitting a little bit of both there. But we weren't jigging a lot, and sometimes the jigging, if you have a lot of guys jigging, you can't really operate the chunking at the same time because that gets a mess going on. You get a little blackfin swimming around the boat,
For sure.
Right. Well, what about?
Go ahead, Patrick.
Go ahead. All right. Well,
about trolling, yeah.
No, I was gonna ask a little bit more into the live bait game. I mean, are you rolling out there with a bunch of different types of live bait, or you got one particular live bait in mind that you want to go out there with this time of the year, or what? Tell us more about
we took a little bit of the thicker cigar minnows out, the butter beans, the hardtails, but most of the time, when we get out there, I mean, if you can get the candy that's out there, such as flying fish, that's the go-to. So we try to take a big pull net or cast net, try to scoop up a few out there and get them on live and send them down. Now, if you can get away with it, we got smaller jigs that we'll use to get like a small blackfin or something. If you can get it on hooked up quick, have a rig ready, separate, a live bait hook and all, get it on live and thumb it down. That works too. So we just we roll out there with what we got. But like I said, when you can get that bait that's already out there, the small blackfin or the flying fish, that's automatic almost.
Oh yeah, flying fish is the ticket for sure. Remember scrambling around the boat many a night, scooping up those jokers.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about trolling a little bit. You guys caught a couple of yellowfin on the troll.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was good. We got burnt on one. We lost one, and it spooled us in like 30 seconds probably. So I don't know, telling what it was, but yeah, it was on our smaller reel, 30 wide. Yeah, we typically use it. Yeah, it was a burner. One of the charters tried to stop it with his thumb, and he got a little firecracker on that. So he's like, man, I ain't doing that again.
Bet you won't.
Yeah, it was good. Like more outside than so, but just being patient with the trolling game, staying outside, not getting too close because there are the sharks and the barracudas and the blackfin will tear you up a little bit. But I think it bit as far as this weekend, it was outside. That was the best chance. Yeah, long leaders, 8 foot, 7, 8 foot.
Y'all trolling ballyhoo?
Little duster. Ballyhoo, yeah, with a little skirt on there, different color, purple, blue, pink, just mixing it up a little bit. But they seemed to all do really well.
Awesome, man. That's a great offshore report. We got to get that offshore tip from you. This week's offshore tip is brought to us by Hilton's Offshore Charters. The days of heading out and blindly looking for good fishing areas are pretty much over. Don't waste time and money on fuel searching for fish. You need the most recent, highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go. The knowledge provided by today's technology is critical when planning an offshore trip. Make the choice that professional captains all over the Gulf make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. The easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service will have you on the fish every time you go. Check them out at hiltonsoffshore.com. What you think for an offshore tip this week, Captain Kendall?
Yeah, I was going to say something before I get to the tip. David Walters and us, we put out those deep water fads here recently, the Okaloosa County ones.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And they seem to be on fire. I did talk to a boat out there who we kind of cross paths with. He ended up catching 12 mahi and a few wahoo off of that there this weekend. So it's been pretty hot.
It's awesome. So it must be in decent water then.
There. Yeah. You look them up. They got the coordinates out there. There's 4 of them out there. Like I said, they're fairly new. I think August 11th is when we deployed those. So they seem to be having the fish on them as well.
Yeah, for sure. I got offshore probably a couple months after that, and they were already catching marlin and stuff on them. I fished out of Destin with Captain Adam Peoples over there, and they were on the radio. People were chirping, and they were going off just even with that short amount of time with them being out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think the day after that, a guy hooked up on a sailfish or something. I can't remember. But it was a big game fish there. So it's nice to see that doing really well, surviving the hurricane. So
absolutely, that's a big thing as well.
Yeah, but tip, I got 2 of them for you. I was preaching about it earlier about the trolling game. Is just being patient. You mark a few fish. If you see the bait, if you know there's bait down there, it might be a little deeper. And this also varies on what time you get to a drill ship or area that you're fishing. You're marking the bait. The fish are going to be there, whether it's a lot of boats or what. Just being patient. If it is a crowded rig, maybe stay outside a little wider. The fish will feel the pressure, and sometimes being outside, you can kind of find those bigger fish that you're looking for. The next tip when it comes to chunking is to stay busy with it. I get on my deckhands a lot, or whoever's running. If you're a private boat, if you're running the rig yourself, it's just stay busy. It could be you can kind of get caught into it. So if it's a slower night, but as soon as I chunk down, depending on what I'm marking, say about 120, you get about 150 or so. You can sit there for a little bit, play with it, but I try to get it back up, check the bait, check the rig, then do it all over again, and then keep doing it. And every time I stay busy, because they're looking to hit it on the fall. Those fish are. And if you kind of get lazy, a lot of deckhands get lazy, or it might be 2 a.m. I'm
about to say it's monotonous and it gets tiring, so I can relate to that.
Oh, right. It depends on when the fish are hitting. If they're biting, you kind of want to stay after, and that was our case. A lot of our charters were kind of getting tired. They were catching. There's not enough reel power, but the fish were jumping. The weather's going to be bad, so we try to just kind of grind it out. But but depending on the current, that bait will kind of drift up it's almost like you're trolling if you're not bringing it back up and dropping it. And then that's when you get into the blackfin, the small blackfin, the sharks, and whatever, a barracuda cut you off or something like that when you find your bait drifting back up to the surface. So I try to get on the guys just to keep reeling it up, clean the bait off. If you dropped it down 2 or 3 times, get a new bait on there. And we use long leaders, and I personally like no leader. I like no leader at all. So I'll send one down with no leader. Chunking, you can use skin or no skin. Doesn't really matter. I prefer no skin. Not too big of a piece, but a nice chunk size. And like I said, just getting it down there. Once I get to that mark, I'll bring it back up, check everything, and I'm staying busy with it. And I feel like we've caught many, many fish doing that, just working for them,
That's right. Patience and persistence, keeping at it. I love that tip, man.
That's
That's very true. If you can't catch them on the couch, that's why I love that.
That's right.
Sometimes it's easier to go take a nap, but you might miss 3 or 4 tuna, and that makes a difference in a good trip and a decent trip or a bad trip even.
You just got to find a balance, like I said. And some people get frustrated, because they're not getting a bite in the first 2 drops, or they pick up and leave.
Right.
And, sometimes you just got to stay at it. How hard are you working for them?
For sure. Well, man, that's a great report, a great tip. We appreciate you being on, and we look forward to hearing from you again. If folks want to get out and book a charter with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
It's 251-747 all 7s.
Awesome, man. We appreciate it, Captain Kendall. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Keep whacking them.
All right, Captain Patrick. Always love adding to our offshore arsenal. I like Captain Kendall. We'll have to have him back on, man.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a good contributor. We'll have to pick his brain a little bit more on some of that.
Open him up a little bit for sure.
Get some more details on the chunking and the trolling and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Find the real tips.
4th generation captain, man. That's pretty awesome.
It's pretty solid. Where are we going next?
Yeah, let's head on down to your specialty. Let's see what Captain Bobby Abriscato is doing, 18 fishing. How we doing, Captain Bobo?
Well, I'm doing really good now, and of course I saw Patrick this morning. We were all bundled up and stuff. But I mean, if you're a trout fisherman right now, you love that stuff. You know, he'll tell you, man, we don't mind getting bundled up. This is a time of year we look forward to. You know, of course, I'm sure Patrick and you Butch are both, like me, man. We love it all. It doesn't matter if it's short weather, bundled up weather, but this is just something that we just don't have very much of this time of year. So something we kind of look forward to,
Absolutely.
Ice on the deck of the boat and that sort of thing. I know that sounds crazy, but we actually like that kind of stuff.
It is weird, Bobby, because my hands go numb and I have difficult time tying knots and stuff, but damn, I love this time of the year. I love the trout. I love the way the trout behave this time of the year.
Yeah, I know. And I tell you what, it's a special time of the year, man. And like I said, it's a different type of fishing. It's a different bite. It just doesn't last very long here. We kind of look forward to it, getting up there like that and launching when the water's low and cold and, that sort of thing. And knowing what's going to happen out there when you get in there and start fishing those rivers and some of this deep water stuff and, what the fishing can be like.
Well, at least it's happening this year at all. Really.
Yeah, it has. I'll tell you, everybody's got Delta withdrawal, from as slow as it's been non-existent as it's been for the last couple of years. And to have it start happening again this year is, it's just been a treat for the people that love to fish up there and that have been up there and done that kind of fishing, know how special it is. And to have it, again, after we got teased for 2 years and not having it, it's been a lot of fun, man. It's not, banner like it has been, and there's guys that have been doing it a lot longer than I have up there, but I've had some really special trips up there, and it's just good to have it back, even though it's still not quite where it was, but I think it's going to continue to get better. We got a bubble of water that we're that's coming down right now, but I'm hoping if we don't get much more upstate rain, and then we got this, of course, this cold weather really usually kicks it off, but it just so happened that we got a bubble of fresh water coming down at the same time. But as soon as this water gets out of here, this thing's going to really bust open.
Well, tell us a little bit about it, man. I know you've been fishing some Delta and some tidal rivers. Just kind of walk us through your last week.
Well, what I do is kind of up there to me when I'm talking about the Delta is I fish that one. To me, that place really comes to life when the water falls out of there. When, in other words, you have a falling tide. Not that you can't catch them on the flood tide, but I really like that falling tide. And we cycled through a nip towards the end of last week and into the weekend. And so sometimes in those cases, I'll move down to some of the other rivers. So I've been flip-flopping between the two. But as far as the Delta goes, when we had I say warmer weather, warmer than what we've got right now, I was spending more time maybe starting in the morning in some of the river channels, dragging some grubs and jigging some grubs, and then getting out in the shallow bays and the flats that are on the edges of the channels up there catching fish. And again, kind of focusing on that falling water, that was the deal. And then the other days when that tide slowed down, and then we had some of that southerly component in the wind, it kind of backs up that Delta a little bit. And I moved down to some of the other rivers on the west side of the bay and just had some really good trips, still doing kind of the same thing, but maybe focusing a little bit more on the popping corks. And then when we got this cooler weather, started fishing some of those up until yesterday with the slick lure, which I really look forward to. We catch fish on that lure year round, but the winter time or late fall and winter time when the fishes start to gather on the ledges of those river channels, man, that lure is just dynamite. I mean, it's just, and I mean that almost in a literal sense, because it's about as close to a guarantee when you use it in the right application as dynamite is. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It's an awesome bite, man. They just hammer it.
Yeah, they hammer it, and when you use it right, it's pretty hard to beat, And so that really came together. He's got some new colors that they've come out with that I caught fish on the first time I used them, which was in the last couple of days. And I still have my favorite I go to, the one he named after me, but Some of the more subtle colors seem to work when the sun gets up, particularly when you got clearer water like we have in some of those rivers down there right now. But early in the morning and off-color water, cloudy days, I still like the beak-cat, the pearl with the chartreuse tail. But that cool beans and the goblin, which are fairly new, he came up with those a couple of years ago, worked really good, particularly yesterday. And then I can't remember actually a couple of the other new colors I used the other day. One of them's got a black back and gold sides. It looks kind of like the goblin, but it's got gold belly. That one did really good. I got one of those that looks like it's been through a meat grinder, So
well, that's
just keeps
good.
That's the way I like them to look. I kind of save those as souvenirs. I got them laying on my desk and things. I love those ones that look like they've been through a meat grinder, And so anyway, but so that's kind of been the deal for me, and I don't see any big changes. We're cycling into a really good tide cycle where you have moving water all the way through this weekend. You're going to have moving water till at least mid-morning, maybe lunchtime. We're going to have falling water. So whichever system you like to fish, you're going to have some good moving water. And I think that's going to be the deal. I think it's going to be jigging in the main river channels or on the ledges, and maybe in some of the mid-depth or shallow-depth rivers going to that slick lure and just trying to match trying to find the right color for the water clarity that you're fishing.
For sure. Captain Bobby, you're talking about, loving to fish a fallen tide. Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, particularly in the Delta, that really seems to bring, to me, it just really seems to bring that place to life there when that tide falls out of there, And
yes, sir.
But now it's, again, not saying that you can't catch them up there on the flood tide, but the other rivers, around the bay, both on the east and west side, and even down south and the sound, doesn't really matter as much. Those are less sensitive to water movement, period, as long as you've got some good water movement, or even wind sometimes can affect the bite there. But that Delta, for some reason, that just seems to me like that water, when it dumps out of there hard, it really brings that place to life. Don't you think, Patrick?
I'd agree. And I think at least probably through mid-December, most of that is stimulated by the shrimp movement. And the shrimp pumping into those estuaries, the little bit of grass that's still there. That's typically what I'm finding. Is that what you're seeing too? Is mostly on that shrimp movement?
Yep. It's all a shrimp deal. Until those shrimp get out of there, that's going to be that's going to be a deal. And I think that's what happens to. I think that's, I say the water movement. The water affects the shrimp movement, which affects the trout bite. So it's really the true, base of the thing is what's happening with the shrimp, because that's all about the shrimp up there. That's why those shrimp imitations, whether they're on a jig head or under a popping cork, work so well up there pretty much year round. I just think that's all shrimp driven up there. And that's exactly what happens with that hard falling water. That
makes sense. Whenever you said that, it got me thinking. I mean, tide's been pretty dang low here. And we have those, in the winter. Whenever you're approaching a day and it's going to be what I call a winter low or a hard low, how do you approach, you're talking about fishing channels and ledges and drop-offs. How does that affect where you're going to fish, or does it?
Well, it does. And that's a great question, because there's certain places that fish a lot better when you get, low water, or on the flip side of that, high water, and I got places that I consider, both. You get places like, really all the tidal rivers, I don't consider those high water spots, because there's places there where you actually I almost like a little bit of lower water, because it kind of pulls those fish out of some of those bays, I think, and out of the grass a little bit. Some of the places that a week or two ago we were catching fish are almost dry land now, and all that can do is pull those fish down. And so it really kind of concentrates them a little bit, and then when you get these super low tides, I'm just thinking about a couple of the places that I fish in some of the rivers down the bay. There's some places that you just don't even want to go in. Not that you can't get the boat into, you're just not going to catch any fish, because a couple of weeks ago it was 3.5 feet deep. Now it's a foot deep, and
right.
you could plow and get your boat in there. You're just not going to catch anything. To your question, when does it affect where I go? Yeah, it does, because there's places, one, you can't get to, but even if you could, you're not going to catch them. And then there's places where it actually gets good when you get those low water. Fowl River, for example, your river down there, it doesn't seem to really have any effect down there. That's such a fairly deep river to where it's you get a big, super strong tide, low tide like we're getting right now. It just doesn't seem to affect them too much, because there's so much deep water there. Where you take a place like a Grand Bay, for example, or whether it's the north or the south Grand Bay, I mean, you're going to really struggle to catch trout on some real low water events in some of those places, you know. And I'm just using those as an example. You could plug in a lot of those other shallow bays like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas that are basically unfishable. Like I ran over into Chocolate Bay after I cleaned fish today to dump my carcasses, and I was about to come out of the throttle. And I was like, no, if I set this baby down, I'm
be pushing her out.
I'm gonna have to idle all the way back out. So
that's exactly right. Yeah.
So I wheeled on back around out of there and found a better place to dump my fish heads this afternoon. But I mean, when you get into areas that are typically 3.5, 4 feet of water on a normal tide that are now sitting at about 1.9 to 2.2, something like that. I mean, that's very difficult to fish out of a boat, at least for speckled trout anyway.
That's right. And if you like to move around a lot and you get in that situation, the tip you got to kind of read between the lines of what he was just talking about there. But you start talking about places like that and you do run up in the bay, like Chocolate, for example, like Patrick was talking about, you get up in there and you shut down and go ahead and start fishing. Well, you got to realize, well, now I can't get the boat back on plane. I got to idle for a quarter mile or a half a mile. So you can't go in there and make 20 casts, find out you're not going to catch anything and jump it back up on plane. Now you're committed in there for 20 minutes or half an hour just trying to get out of there, you know. So you've got those issues to deal with too. And there's a lot of that, both the Delta and then down south too. There's a lot of that situation. So you got to kind of, again, we're still answering your question, Butch. You got to kind of play that into where you're planning on fishing. When you look at it, you go like, oh man, we killed them in Chocolate the other day, or Delvan or whatever. And you find in there like Patrick did, and you look behind you, got an 80-foot black rooster tail behind you. You don't want to slow down. You know?
You can't.
I did it.
You can't.
You
can't. And if you do, you might as well put out a mailbox that's going to be there for a little while. You know.
Yep, for sure.
Speaking of Delvan, I did that a couple of weeks ago. I was like, man, you know what? We caught them in here. They're going to be in here. And I ran up in there and my fish find, the Ray Marine started blinking and then it totally quit reading. I was like, you know what? I think it's a little shallow.
Abort.
And I freaking wheeled it around and hammered down and drove my butt right back out of there because it was not going to happen. Because just like you said, if you set it down, you're going to have to idle for 20, 30 minutes to get back out to where you can go plane off and take off. So now you just like kill 45 minutes of your day going to the, somewhere that's not even fishable.
Yep. Putting around and nobody's even fishing, So, and there's people I'm sure that are saying, well, I could do that. And if you're in a little bitty boat, you probably could, a little flats boat or something like that. You could probably get jumped back up. These big boats that we have, you're not gonna, without just totally destroying something, you're not gonna get it, jumped up in that kind of water. So that's in some of those bays, like, well, in some of those bays, like Patrick mentioned, Delvan or Grand, if you get up in the north end of those, some of those places, dude, you're a long ways from water that you can get jumped back up in without tearing something up, so you're spending that whole time. And the whole point of the thing is you run up in some of the super shallow stuff that you're probably not going to catch anything anyway, as far as trout goes. I mean, you could probably sneak up on some redfish if you were lucky, but again, that's a gamble making that kind of run to do that.
Yep, got to pay attention for sure. Well, it's a great report, Captain Bobby. This is Hey Cap. We got a Hey Cap for you this week. I like this one for you guys. This Hey Cap's brought to us by Foster Contracting. Do you need a new roof? Do you have wind or other hurricane damage? You may be qualified for a free roof. Foster Contracting will inspect your damage and provide you with an estimate stress-free, and they will also handle your insurance claim. Your roof is your first line of defense against hurricane and other storm-related damage. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your day. Foster Contracting has you covered. Check them out on the web at www.fortifiedroofingpros.com or give them a call at 251-447-2978. All right. This week's Hey Cap comes from Nathan Wilson. He posted it over on the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report page. He said, "Hey Cap, what's the best way / conditions to fish the slick and the little slick? And also, what colors do you find to be the most successful?"
Oh, well, we talked a little bit about that, but as far as the big slick, the original, the slick lure, which is I use that one. Probably the big thing is you got first step to the whole deal is you got to make sure you've got it rigged right. That lure works really well, like we were just talking about, but it's got to be rigged properly. So the first thing I tell everybody is make sure that the thing, when you get it set up on the lure the hook, and the hook, by the way, you'll want to use is a 4/0 owner beast hook with the 1/8 ounce weight. The 1/8
like the
ounce
weight too.
Swim bait hook. Yeah, got to have the weight. The one that he sends in the pack, you can just throw away. It doesn't work. But it's the same hook, but it doesn't have the weight on it. In our area, the weight, it makes all the difference. But the big thing is you want to make sure that when you rig that lure up, when it's all set up and you're ready to cast it, that the lure's not coming to the surface or jerking all off to one side. When you go to work it, you want it to have a kind of a side to side motion, much like you would a topwater bait. So usually what I do, I've done it so much now, I kind of know how it's going to work, but I still will put it in the water and jerk it a couple times and make sure it's going side to side, not jumping straight up to the surface or spinning or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's the first thing you got to do.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's got to be working kind of working side to side. That's the very first thing you got to do. And then the next thing I'd say is, I would say I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to work that lure. I think, I've been on the boat with Richard a lot. We fish together a lot in tournaments, and we work at 180 degrees difference from each other, and sometimes catch them right next to each other, shoulder to shoulder. Sometimes I catch them better than he does sometimes, but he jerks the crap out of it, and I kind of, he goes, I don't even know you're reeling because I barely move my rod tip, so, and then I think we watched Patrick at the boat show. His is different, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think there's a right or wrong way to work it. I think the main thing is, one of the big things I think between all of them is you got to keep the lure moving, whether it be sinking. In other words, if you're jerking it real hard and work a pause, and even when that lure sinks, it's still swimming side to side. I never stop reeling the lure. I'm constantly reeling, but barely moving my rod tip, and never stop reeling the lure. So
positive tension.
As far as
positive tension is what I've learned. You can't let it get slack. You can't pop and give slack and then reel. You've got to keep it moving.
That's right.
And keep it. And the other thing about that too, particularly that big lure. That big lure is you've got to be able to, if you get a bite, you better be in contact with the lure, because you've got to stick those fish with that lure. And which brings me to another point is there's 3 different types of line. You got mono braid and fluorocarbon. And we talked about this on another segment, but don't try and use that lure with mono. You're going to get so frustrated trying to hook fish with monofilament with that lure, it'll drive you nuts. You'll feel them hit it, you just never get a hook in them. And so if you haven't used braid or fluorocarbon, I would highly, you almost have to use it with that lure to be really sweet. Now you're going to get the bites with mono, but you're just going to have trouble hooking them because there's so much stretch with mono. And that lure is such a big lure, and it's a big fish lure. You got to have something with minimal stretch in it to get the hook into those fish and keep it in them, So those are the couple tips. As far as color goes, we touched on that a minute ago. I personally like a brighter color and off-color water, and a more subtle color, a more natural color and clear water or bright conditions. So, you can look through the spectrum of colors that he has on his website. You'll kind of figure it out, which ones.
I got a bunch for either conditions. Yeah.
That's right. And so I would carry at least a couple or 3, what you call brighter lures, and a couple more natural color lures. And they're going to work, something in there is going to work for you once you get those other basics down.
Yeah. I get questions all the time on the Facebook page or email or just people talking to me. How do I work this thing? And I tell them my story about how I could not catch anything on it at first. And just like topwater, like I've been doing, you just got to hammer it, man. You got to stick to it. You have to say, I'm just going to throw this, and I'm going to figure out the cadence that they want.
Yeah,
that's right.
And
I too.
And I can tell you, it really does. Again, and the probably one last thing that I'd throw in there, and this is with any lure really, but it's with that lure as well. Is don't go in the Theodore Industrial Canal in 25 feet of
right.
Rodeo River.
Got to be under the right conditions.
And exactly. And try and get that lure to work, because it's not that type of lure. This is a lure that you're going to work where if you previously used some kind of mirror lure or a slow suspending lure or a slow sinking or suspending lure, that's the application you want to use it, which for me, typically that's water shallow, 8 feet or shallower. Don't try and, use that. Now, I'm talking about the original slick,
Right.
The big fat one, it's not going to work with that hook that I was just talking about. So you got to use it in the right application too. You just can't go out there and, just throw it out there in 25 feet of water and expect it to instantly start catching fish, because it's not going to do it. Nor would a mirror lure, unless you counted to about 20 till it got down there,
Right.
So
yeah, for sure. Well, I know Captain Patrick uses that little slick a lot. Give us the little slick rundown.
So the little slick, where Bobby's talking about don't really use it in that 20 to 25 feet of water, I have actually been successful with the original slick in those kind of areas, but it's definitely not the best case scenario. So
definitely hone your skills otherwise before you go trying.
When you start trying to catch a fish somewhere in amongst 25 feet of water, you're really shooting yourself in the foot on trying to learn how to use a lure.
But the little slick will shine in that, correct?
The little slick works well. It's you can rig it as a traditional jig, just like a 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce jig head. Throw it out, let it sink all the way to the bottom, hop it back in your favorite cadence, whether you're dragging it, hopping, whatever you're doing, keeping it close to the bottom. But there's one technique that I've been using more so in kind of that intermediate range, like say about 5 feet to about 12 feet deep, is using a swim bait hook. And you can use the owner twist lock 4/0, or I've talked to some guys that use as small as the 1/0 twist lock, but I've been using the 4/0, and that's not the Beast. The Beast is specific to the big slick or the original slick, but using that twist lock swim bait weighted hook, throwing it out and letting it sink to the bottom and kind of working it where I'll like hop. I'll do 2 sharp twitches and then keep the line tight enough to where I can sense a bite, but also loose enough to where the lure is going to sink back towards the bottom, and it's going to sink somewhat horizontal, so it's going to cover a nice long stretch of water before it goes back to the bottom. And we were smoking some good trout on it today, using that particular method.
What size weight does that hook have on it?
Man, I don't know if it's the 8 or a 1/4. You put me on the spot, Bobby. But
That's all right. And actually,
all right.
listening to it, it sounds like in 5 feet of water, 1/4 would be kind of heavy. So I bet it's the 8. But the reason I'm asking is I'm sitting here writing it down because I'm getting ready to order some of them.
Man,
That's what I do too.
It worked really well for us today. And we caught them today. We actually caught them both on the swim bait setup and on the jig head. And the swim bait, the cool thing about throwing it with the swim bait hook were the fish were always hitting it after you hopped it. So I felt like we were always twitching it about 2 to 3 feet up off the bottom, and the fish were hitting it probably within about 1 foot to maybe 2 feet off the bottom. Whereas the ones that we were fishing on the jig head, they were always hitting it once it was like really once it was on the bottom and sitting still for a second. That's when they would pick it up and eat it. We used exclusively the Swamp Thing color, so we didn't really talk much about on the little slick colors. But the Swamp Thing, I'm almost out of. Uncle Joey I've already put in the order with him, and I'm about to have to FedEx him some money to make sure I get these damn lures back in a short period of time.
You better hurry up because I'm sitting here on my computer ordering them right now.
He's going to outbid you. That's an
yeah.
awesome question.
Outbidding them, that's right.
That's right. That's an awesome answer, an awesome question, Nathan. We appreciate that. Nathan's going to get a prize pack from the Slick Lure from pureflats.com. Nathan, make sure you email us at alabama@bestfishingreport.com with your shipping address, and we'll get that over to pureflats.com so you can get your package. Captain Bobby, awesome report as always. Awesome Hey Cap answer, and people want to get up with you and book a trip. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way is ateamfishing.com, all one word. That's my website. It's got our phone number and the little contact us form on there you can fill out and request the dates. And that's by far the easiest, and Miss Kim's always standing by.
Well, hey, Bobby, before we let you go, you mentioned to me this morning that the fella you had go with you today was real interested in hitting the Delta up. Is that something that you like to do, or that you'll entertain with your customers? Is if they have something specific they're wanting to try to do or accomplish, is that something worth a phone call and trying to book a trip with you?
Oh yeah, I'm always open to. I get requests for targeting big trout, targeting redfish, wade fishing trips, specific stuff like that, and I'm always open to it. I'm fortunately, like you too, I can cover pretty much most, but from one end of the bay to the other, and do just about a little bit of everything. So I'm open to whatever, and I was all fired up about that today too. So I'm good with it. More often than not, as you well know, we get more like, we just want to go fishing, but I do get specific requests, and that was, that's what happens is, you'll get, I want to learn this area. I just had people that I'm taking tomorrow is wanting to learn how to fish Foul River, so we're going there, so I do kind of whatever they want to do, and that's the benefit of being able to move from one end of the bay to the other and or at least think you can be successful in those areas, but having the experience, let me just say, at least having the experience of doing it to where you can have a reasonable chance, if nothing else, just kind of show them what to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely do that.
Good deal. We all watch out for snakes and crocodiles here in Foul River. I hear they're pretty thick. Hey, I actually saw a manatee yesterday. I'm 99% sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, I saw one for 100% sure the other day, because I almost ran over him in the Delta. It was it was in front of me, and I was running hard, and I saw a little puff of water, like like a little, and it just had to happen quick, and I said, oh, I think I know what that is, and I turned the boat just enough to where he was just going down, but his tail was literally, we could have reached over the side and touched his tail when we ran by him, Wow. So I know I got a positive ID on one the other day in the raft. In the Spanish River the other day.
I feel sure that I did too. I just looked out there and
I know you did.
It was either a walrus or a manatee. I don't see many walruses around here, so I feel quite confident.
No, it was a manatee. But Foul River doesn't surprise me at all. I've seen them. I've never seen one in Foul, but I've seen them in Dog. I've seen them in Delvan Bay. I've seen them in Bala Battery. I've seen them in West Foul River, Grand Bay. So and I remember the very first one I ever saw was in March in Bala Battery about 20 years ago. And it just blew me away. And a fellow rode by me after I was trying. And this is way back in the handheld camcorder days. I got my camcorder out, and I was going, God, I wish he'd come up again. And this guy rode by me, and I said, man, I just saw a manatee. He goes, oh yeah, man, they're all in here. I went, what? Yeah. So, and that was 20 years ago, but it's not such an uncommon sight anymore.
Yeah, that's crazy. You guys watch out for manatees.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Captain Bobby. We appreciate it as always, buddy. We'll talk to you next time.
Okay, brother. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Captain Patrick. Always good to pick old Captain Bobo's brain.
Man, hey, the information out of his brain is endless.
Captain Bobo hotline. I like it. All right, man. Let's head on down to Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Pensacola area. See what Captain Dustin Hayes is up to. What you say, Cap?
What's up, guys?
Oh, man. Just been getting the report. Really good inshore report from over here. I know you've been doing a little bit of inshore and some surf fishing. Let's hit surf fishing first, man. What's been going on? Here it's been hot.
Yeah.
Well, cold.
Yeah, this
but
is
hot.
Yeah, it's been cold for sure. This is my favorite time of year. Everybody loves a spring pompano run, and everybody should. It's what we all look forward to. But year after year, Thanksgiving to Christmas is like my sweet spot on surf fishing, and fishing pressure gets down a little bit because a lot of people don't like cold weather. The bite's on fire because the water's still fairly warm. This little front we just had is going to cool it off a little more. But prior to Monday, the water was still fairly warm. So the whiting bite is always incredible this time of year, whether it's numbers or quality or both. You can usually travel around a few different spots, find a consistent bite and catch, a dozen to 2 dozen fish. Sometimes quadruple that, and I know that sounds crazy, but you can seriously find some massive schools of whiting this time of year, and encourage everybody, if you do find a hot and heavy bite, and you're like, oh yeah, we're catching them good, try to figure out a limit that works for you as far as the size. Like I personally do 10 inches. I don't have no need for an 8-inch whiting when I'm catching one every minute and a half. 10 inch and above, you'll catch a lot of 12, 13, 14, 15 inches this time of year. Sounds crazy. but it's the truth. And then on top of that, there's a lot of pompano being caught. I just saw on Facebook a minute ago, my buddy Bun, he caught some nice pompano today and some nice whiting as well. Later last week, I had a few trips and right before Thanksgiving, and man, we were just crushing fish. Good numbers of whiting, hooked a few redfish or possibly big pompano. This fish that were just going wild as soon as I hit the rod. Didn't stay pinned, but the pompano bite is pretty consistent. We fished 3 days in a row last week, same spot, and it was pretty cool to see how the bite changed every day. One morning, I think it was the first morning, we caught like 5 pompanos. Second morning, we caught only 3, but 2 of the 3 were really good size. And then the third morning, I think we ended up with 7. And most of these fish are going to be smaller size. These are guys, little guys that are born from the spawn that we had back, say, March, April, May. These guys are like 10 and a half inches. So they're, yearling fish or just over it. And there are good fish mixed in, though. Some people say, use bigger baits to cull through them. My thing is, if they're coming through, catch them all the same. But a lot of schooling pompano as far as that size range goes. Those guys are in big schools, and we're catching them. I had I think it was week 4 last, but similar conditions, north wind, it was fairly calm. We had 2 rods out with double drop rigs and Fishbites on all 4 hooks, and both doubled up with pompano. So we had 4 pompano on 2 rods at the same time. So that was pretty cool. But
that's strong.
Yeah. And not to like kind of push a product, but I always use shrimp this time of year. And once it gets to a point where it gets cold, shrimp and fish bites and stuff doesn't do as well. You almost have to have ghost shrimp, and shrimp works some days, regular, white shrimp and stuff. But honestly, the last week and the week prior, the pink fish bites was the ticket. I mean, I had 1 cup of shrimp, and I always bring bait. I mean, I'm not one of those like, oh yeah, I don't need bait. I always have bait no matter what, and I always try to have variety because you don't know what those fish are going to do every day. But we were seriously catching fish more on fish bites than we were on natural bait. And it was, particularly the pink. We caught some on the sand flea, but man, that pink was just on fire. I mean, on 2 drop rigs, it was 2 fish at a time, whether it was a whiting and a croaker, or 2 croakers, or 2 whiting, or 2 pompano. It was just hot action, and it was kind of deterring some other stuff, a few catfish on the rougher days. But there's usually a window in the fall where that's the case. I started using fish bites a long time ago. That was what. Go ahead.
Can I ask you talking about fish bites? I'm very curious because this is the time of the year where they have 2 different products. They have the fast release, and I guess if you don't know that one's fast release and one's slow release, they have the red pack and the blue pack, to be more specific. Which pack are you going to use this time of year, or do you not care? Tell me more about that. If there's even pay attention to
a lot of people go with the red packs because it's $1 or $2 cheaper normally, but it's a little thinner and it doesn't have that mesh in it. I'm pretty sure, I may be wrong, but I'm pretty positive it doesn't have that mesh in it like the blue packs do, like the normal fish bites. I'll prefer that mesh. It's going to last a lot longer.
For sure.
I was told that, and I've heard different stories, and like I said, this could be something I'd be interested somebody to put in their input on this. But I was told that scent travels slower in cooler water than it does in warmer water. And I've kind of believed in that for years, and that's kind of why, I thought the red pack would be a cool thing in the winter. I've heard other people tell me, that's not so true, and so on and so on. That being said, I've always kind of stuck with the blue packs because they do have the mesh in them. It stays on the hook a good while, and I can usually get more longevity out of that bait. I do notice, like sometimes with the traditional blue fish bites or blue pack, that it may take, if you put a fresh piece out there, it may take 2 or 3 minutes before you get a bite because it almost like it has to soak and start releasing that scent. As far as the exact science of that, as far as the water temperature has anything to do with that, I'm not sure. I've been told that before by some people, and then I've had people tell me, otherwise. So I just kind of experiment on my own as far as different colors, flavors, all that stuff, scents, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And it's just one of those things that, like I said, I've always used the blue packs, even in the dead of winter, and I've done good. Like if you find white trout, anything like that, or brown mullet in the deeper waters of the intercoastal, even this time of year, in the middle of winter, they do not mind either one of them. But that blue pack does have that mesh, and that seems to be kind of the whole selling point to me on the Fishbites. Is something that's going to stay on that hook real good.
That's a great question. That's a great talking point as well. Maybe we can get a expert from Fishbites to come on and give us their rundown on that. I'd be very interested to see the science behind that.
I would be too.
Well, Dusty, I know you've been doing some inshore over there. Yeah, let's do it. I'll send an email. I know people.
Yeah, make it happen, Butch.
That's right. Yeah, I know you were doing some inshore over there. Tell us about it, man.
Yeah, so the bite over here has been pretty on fire. We got the full moon right now, and a lot of guys catching redfish around the bridges, and of course, and sheepshead. The sheepshead bite really picked up big time. It was right before Thanksgiving. We had a couple cool fronts, and some guys catching them after Halloween, obviously, but usually around Thanksgiving week, man, we have a cold front, and this year in particular, it was a few days later. But I mean, you can almost bank on a good front coming through within a week or two before or after Thanksgiving. But prior, we had some cooler weather, and that sheepshead bite was just outstanding. I fished a few different places from the intercoastal, all the bridges along, the wharf, the 59 bridge, and you'll see, a lot of people in kayaks and stuff fish the 59 bridge quite often and catch good numbers of sheepshead. Pretty much anywhere from. I'm sure Mobile Bay's full of them too, but all that structure on our side, from Gulf Shores to the intercoastal, all the way to Rodeo Pass, all the big piers and stuff, they're going to have sheepshead on them. We haven't had any issue with them not eating shrimp so far. There's times where they may like a fiddler crab better. So this cooler weather, shrimp usually isn't, I'm not scared to use it simply because the pinfish and stuff aren't so bad when that water is warmer. You may notice that those pinfish want to be a little more aggressive and croakers and stuff, especially if you're in the backwaters as opposed to like Rodeo Pass or something like that. But, I don't mind it. I think having the appropriate size hook and shrimp combination really does good on catching those sheepshead. I like the Eagle Claw 084-2, which is just an all-purpose live bait hook, and that works. I mean, stellar hookup ratio. I've taught plenty of people how to sheepshead fish, and that's really the main thing for me with sheepshead is not just finding the fish, but it is being able to detect, when you're getting that bite and when to set that hook. And it's something that it does take a little experience and almost like an art to master. But once you get it, you got it. Like I said, having the proper hook and the right size bait is definitely a big component in that. But as far as everything else goes, the trout are moving up in the creeks from Soldiers Creek to Bon Secours, everything in between, as well as the redfish. You still got plenty of redfish around the pass, on the jetties, underneath the bridge. And then, whenever we get a good window of calm weather for that, like the past couple of days when that wind's been blowing north, the redfish have been running up and down the beach. Pensacola Bay area, they're traditional this time of year, usually from Halloween to Christmas and sometimes a little further or a little later. Those redfish are spawning. And go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, are the ones that are running the beaches right now, is that all the bull red class or slot reds or a little bit of both?
They're usually, on the bigger side, I would say 30 plus inches. A lot of years, or I'll say a lot of years, a lot of times, like some years it seems like there's bigger fish than others. For the most part, the fish that are schooled up out in the Gulf along the beach, they're usually better fish. I mean, it's hard to find them under 35 inches. I would say 35 to 40 inches is about your average. People say, oh, yeah, 50-pound reds, pretty rare. They're definitely 10 to 15-pound fish for sure.
Yeah.
Which is still a stud redfish. That's a big redfish.
They're fun.
And they're fat, yeah. Yeah, they're fat fish. I mean, we got into school this week last year, and man, I mean, every one of them was 40 inches, 41 inches, and they were just tanks. I mean, they're huge round fish. But as far as that goes, it's just going and looking. It's just like cobia fishing. It's just like deer hunting. You're not gonna catch them just pulling out of the pass one day and like, oh yeah, I don't see them. Just got to go. Went a couple weeks ago with Chris, and we just trolled we weren't trolling. We were just going up and down tide line for a little bit. Never saw anything. The birds were on fire on the way there. And then once we actually got on the water, all the birds were sitting down, not doing anything. And then we looked behind us. They popped up, got to them, teased them up to the boat with the poppers, and fly rods were down in the gunnels. And, we would see them here and there just kind of shooting off. They'd come up in 10 or 12 of them. We'd get there, they'd go down, and then the next day, I look on Facebook and there's 10 guides on a school that was up for 6 hours. So, you just got to spend the time and go and look for them, and it'll happen eventually. If you're out there all day, every day, and you have that luxury, then you'll find them for sure. For somebody that only gets to go here and there, you just got to be consistent with it, and just look for them. Look for birds. Don't worry about seagulls. Seagulls will dive on anything bait wise. Look for pelicans, bigger birds, terns and frigates and stuff like that, and that's going to usually provide bigger bait, like the big pogies that they're chasing right now.
Well, Dusty, give me an idea. If you were going to leave the pass and look for a school of redfish, you gonna go maybe 5, 6 miles, 10 miles? What's I don't know, a fair range?
Yeah, what's a good template?
Where you feel like, all right, I went east this far, I went west this far, and I didn't find them. Or what would be your model?
Usually what I'm going to do personally, and I'm not saying this is the only option, this is just me, I'll always go west just because this is what I've always done. You'll usually see some around the Four Seasons pier. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. It's the same thing with trolling. I've been doing it since high school in that area. We find them there in the summer. We find them there in the winter. And furthest west I'll go is usually the Gulf State Pier. And they'll find those big schools of pogies and stuff will hang around that pier because the structure and the redfish will do the same. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're right in the middle between the two. It's just a matter of looking. And as far as the distance offshore, I would say, no more than a mile and a half at most off the beach. I mean, they're going to be fairly close to the beach. They might be a little further some days, but a good pair of binoculars goes a long way. If you can look for birds, any bird activity, you'd be amazed. I don't know what it is in a bird's brain, but a pelican will see or feel or hear whatever they do that, they sense other birds diving miles away, and they'll all pick up and fly a certain way. If you see 10 pelicans flying a certain way, head that way. And sometimes you may not be able to see it with your bare eye, but there'll be birds diving a mile and a half away you can't see, and they're on fish. Usually the west is the way I like to go. If I do go east, I'll go a few miles towards the state park before you get to Johnson's Beach and the condos in Perdido Key. If you got the day of it and it's beautiful weather, pick a direction, west or east, and just ride it out. I don't think you can make a bad decision by going east or west. There's multiple schools. It's not just a single school out there, but there will be fish. I usually like to try to look for the cleaner water, and sometimes that may be to the west, sometimes that may be to the east, but I've seen them in dirty water too. So there's no exacts when it comes to that. It's just a matter of finding the birds. You'll find the bait, and usually the fish are going to hang around. If the tide is not perfect where those birds aren't diving like crazy and there's just not a lot of activity, trolling is definitely the next best option as far as things you control. Your man stretch 25 is a go-to classic. And then, like the Rapala, Husky Jerk Magnums and stuff like that. Pink is always a huge wintertime color for the guys pulling hard baits for redfish, but you will find fish that way. If you have a good bottom machine, even a halfway decent one, you'll mark schools of fish chasing bait around. The birds may be sitting down because the bait's a little deeper, but there will be fish just kind of just hanging out in the general area because they're waiting on those birds to push the bait down, or vice versa. The birds are waiting on the fish to push the bait up. So trolling is a good way to cover ground if you don't see a lot of activity.
And you're looking and fishing.
Yep. Yeah, you're fishing. You're not wasting time. If you have a technique specific thing, like, hey, I want to catch one on a popper today, or hey, I want to catch one on the jig, or hey, I want to catch one on the fly rod, then yeah, you may want to just kind of just cruise and look. But if you just want to catch fish, trolling is an incredible way to do it. I know a few guides that fish out of Fort Morgan normally, and they're fishing over here out of Orange Beach now, and they're just going up and down the beach and trolling and catching good numbers, anywhere from 2 or 3 to 10 or 12 redfish, every trip. Good sized fish, all 30+ inch fish, just trolling pink plugs and red and white plugs, like the man stretches and stuff like that. So they're definitely out there. If you do go,
how fast are you trolling for those? How fast? What's your knottage?
Usually not too fast. 4 to 5 knots at most. Yeah, just kind of slow cruising, just because if they're not on top just going crazy. They're just kind of just chilling. And so if you just bring it across them, they're going to, they'll hear it, they'll see it, they'll find it and take a whop at it. But, like I said, they're usually, if they're active, you'll know, because the birds and the bait will be active. But I don't want to troll too fast, it's simply because if they're not active and you're not seeing that surface activity, then they're usually going to be schooled up. They'll be hanging around, sometimes suspended 10 feet off the bottom. And, you don't, not saying you couldn't troll faster, but I don't think there's a need to. You might be able to go a little faster. But a lot of times with your plugs, like the stretch 25s and stuff, if you pull too fast, they will pop on you and shoot right, shoot left, and rise on the surface. So.
For sure, man. That's a great report. We got to get that tip from you. This week's onshore tips brought to us by MDH Foundation Repair. If your home is experiencing foundation problems, MDH Foundation Repair has the best solutions to fix it right and fix it now. The problems you see are only going to get worse, so don't deal with inefficient, unqualified, and pushy salesmen trying to sell you overpriced foundation repair products. The professionals at MDH Foundation will ensure you have a remarkable experience from the first meeting to the finished product. MDH Foundation Repair is redefining the construction industry and protect your most important asset, your home. Check them out at mdhfoundationrepair.com. What you think for a east side / onshore inshore tip? What you got for us?
Yeah, so, I was kind of talking it over with y'all earlier, and it's just a cool topic. This time of year, as far as surf fishing goes, bait is a critical component. And this kind of goes past surf fishing too, even into inshore. A lot of guys use ghost shrimp for wintertime fishing. I don't see them necessary in the summer. There are guys that use them and catch fish in the summer and even the spring into pompano season. Wintertime fishing, when it gets slow and you're just not getting bit, sometimes ghost shrimp's the answer. You'll have days where we're not catching anything. We're getting a bite or two a day, if that. And if you're using ghost shrimp, it could be a totally different output for you. So that being said, just kind of going over some easy things to do when you catch your ghost shrimp. Obviously, you have to have a pump and all to catch them, and that's a different topic for a different day. But when you catch those ghost shrimp, I have a buddy that's from Michigan who actually showed me this, and he gets those ghost shrimp, puts them in a Ziploc bag, he puts salt over them, and then actually, I kind of said that backwards. He lays them out over a paper towel, puts salt over them, and then single lays them down flat in a Ziploc. And when he freezes them, they work fantastic frozen. He's given me a bag of frozen ones before, and they were almost stayed on the hook better than a live one, which is crazy because ghost shrimp are notorious for wanting to come off the hook really easy.
Salt made them a little tougher.
And salt makes them tougher, and then putting them with that paper towel, I don't know what it does, but I guess it dries them out, makes them a lot tougher. But that's a huge thing. Ghost shrimp, everybody wants to catch them live. If you're going to go catch a bunch of them and put in the time and the work, go ahead and just take what you think you're going to use and then freeze the rest of them. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things as far as the resource goes that eventually it'll run out like everything else does, and they don't have a limit on them right now. Not saying that there should be, but like somewhere like Texas has, I think it's 10 per person on ghost shrimp.
Really?
And yep. And so that being said, if I'm not sure if Alabama will ever do anything, but if I've seen guys go out there and catch 300 or 400 of them and use 10 of them and then just chunk the rest on the sand, and they'll be dead and the birds are eating them. So you can catch that many, but just save a little extra time, save them, then you don't have to go catch them again and again and again. So it makes a huge difference. Same thing with sand fleas. A lot of guys, they'll catch sand fleas and blanch them, which is just kind of like a flash boiling, and then freeze them. My thing on sand fleas, though, as far as winter goes, if I can't catch them right in front of me while I'm fishing, then, I'm not as much worried about using them for bait at that particular moment. And spring, that's a different argument. But in the wintertime, I'm not as much worried about sand fleas as I would be a ghost shrimp. Now, ghost shrimp, they're always going to be there. Your issue would be, rougher conditions, being able to catch them in front of you. You can always go bayside, in the intercoastal or lagoon, whatever, and find ghost shrimp. But that takes away from your fishing time. You have to spend hours beforehand doing so. So, yeah, if you have a free day, whatever, you only got a couple hours, not enough time to fish, or cloudy day, conditions aren't how you want them to fish. If you catch some ghost shrimp, that's a quick way to freeze them, and they're telling you they're still top quality, if almost better, for reusing later on, which is cool, because that's something I've always been scared of up until this past spring is, catching ghost shrimp prior to that day you're going to use them.
That's a really good tip, because even like this time of the year, if I choose to buy some live shrimp, I mean, I bought some live shrimp today, and the water is so cold that the shrimp barely even move. So it totally makes sense that if you've got a ghost shrimp very well preserved, that it's going to work equally as one that's freshly caught. And if it stays on the hook better, I mean, that's a double win right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and another thing with ghost shrimp, they call them ghost shrimp for a reason. You don't really see them that often. I'm not saying that a flounder or a redfish don't find one on the flats, popped out of a hole every once in a while. They're called ghost shrimp for a reason. I mean, they live underground. That is where you find them. And fish know. I mean, it's a scent thing. It's not a visual thing.
For sure.
Like you look at, and I don't mean to call, Gulp out, but like Gulp makes a ghost shrimp plastic. And it's called the ghost shrimp. It kind of has the same body shape as a ghost shrimp. But here's the thing. It doesn't work like a ghost shrimp simply because it doesn't smell like a ghost shrimp. It smells like Gulp. The Gulp shrimp, crabs, whatever, they all have the same scent. Not that the scent's not good. I mean, it works great. But
right. It's not particular.
Scent.
Right.
Yep.
Makes sense.
And so that although that visual, may be there as far as like, oh, okay, that's the same body profile, same color. A lot of fish don't recognize that. They're going completely off the scent. It's not like a little blue crab or a shrimp or something they're seeing every single day. It's something they may not really ever see but once in their whole life or a few times.
Definitely.
So it's a big scent thing, and it's something that also works super great for sheep's head too. It's a ghost shrimp. That's something a lot of guys.
Dusty, let's not give away all the goods today.
That's right. We've given away enough. Let's keep something for ourselves. Nah, man, that's a great tip and a great report, man. We all always appreciate hearing from you and enjoy it as well. If folks want to get up with you and book a trip for inshore surf fishing or whatever you're doing that week, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Cap?
The best thing to do is call or text me at 678-897-0167. You can just give me a shout anytime, and I'll help you out.
Awesome, man. We appreciate you giving us the report, and we'll talk to you next time, Cap. Guys, keep whacking them.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, Captain Patrick. That's another great Alabama saltwater fishing report. But we got to do What Did You Learn? This week is brought to us by SunSouth. If you're even thinking about a new tractor or outdoor equipment, don't miss the year-end sales event at SunSouth. Save thousands on a new John Deere during their year-end sales event with 0% financing and payments under $250 a month on select models. Even John Deere Gators are on sale during the year-end sales event. Outdoor equipment, parts, service, accessories, SunSouth has you covered. And it's all on sale now during the year-end sales event. Visit SunSouth for quality John Deere equipment you've been dreaming of, or visit sunsouth.com. The offer expires December 31st, 2020, and some restrictions apply. See dealer for details.
Well, Butch, what did you learn from this show? I know something I learned. What about you?
Man, I learned so much every week. I mean, Captain Bobby's always just a wealth of knowledge. I like to ask him as many hard questions as I can. I can't seem to stump him, unfortunately. I'll get him one day on. I'll get him one day on something.
You ain't gonna get him on anything. I promise you. If it's got to do with speckled trout conversation, he's got the answer.
I definitely believe that. Man, a thing that stuck out to me and that stuck in my head was Captain Kendall with the Gulf Rebel and the Summer Breeze. Awesome offshore contributor, by the way. I'm excited to have him on board.
That was good.
Patience and persistence. He said it was 2 tips, but I mean, it was really the same thing in my opinion. Patience and persistence. We talk about it all the time. You got to be confident in where you're fishing and what you're fishing with, and you got to stick with it sometimes. It's like sometimes, we talk about sticking and moving on here, but sometimes you just got to stick with it, man. If you know you're in a good spot, if you know the bait's there, if you know your bait's good, if you know you're fishing in the right place, patience and persistence will pay off, and it can make the difference in between a crappy trip and a great trip, or a decent trip and a poor trip. You just got to stick with it sometimes. I'm
a firm believer that, at least in the inshore world, that speckled trout are always listening to you. Yeah. And when you and when you say, all right, boys, wrap them up, let's get out of here, or if you say, they ain't here, they're not biting, or one more cast and then we're out of here. That seems to stimulate a good bite, as it did today. I think both of the guys were like, I think both of them had the lines in the water. I said, all right, let's get them up. They're not cooperating. And boom, I think both of them doubled up. One of them caught a fish, one of them didn't. I was like, well, we'll stick it out a little longer, We'll stick it out, and ended up putting a handful more fish in the boat. But yeah, man, I mean, especially this time of year when the water's getting a little cooler.
Slow down a little bit.
Those fish aren't always going to just chomp at the first thing that they see. So It does take a little bit of time to get them dialed in.
For sure. Would you learn anything different than that?
Man, I like the offshore. I like Bobby's stuff. I mean, who can't learn enough from Bobby? But the one thing that stuck out to me was that daggum ghost shrimp that Dusty was talking about.
That's really cool too.
So
that makes a lot of sense, man.
It really does, because there's a lot of times when just using regular shrimp, for instance, using them just either live or fresh dead. And then there's a part where once they're dead and they start getting a little bit of that orange color, or they're starting to turn a little bit of that black color around the head where the gills start to turn black, the shrimp just changes its personality altogether. It's a totally different type of bait. That was very interesting, to take a ghost shrimp and preserve it in a way that it's actually potentially going to work better for you after the preservation. So I'd say for sure anybody that's going surf fishing and understands how to catch them some ghost shrimp.
Why would you not do that?
I mean, certainly add that to the rotation, and
even vacuum seal those suckers.
Yeah. And have them for many, many trips to come.
For sure. And that made me think in my head, Joe talks all the time about, of course, he loves his triple tail, but you get a big batch of live shrimp or even dead shrimp from anywhere, kind of the same exact thing that Dusty was saying. Lay them out on a paper towel. Joe doesn't salt them, but vacuum seal them and freeze them. Mm-hmm. Triple tail don't always want a live shrimp. Sometimes they just want something stinky and significant. And if you put that large dead shrimp on there, it's worked for me several times. Lay a pack of 5 out of the big giant ones, in case you can't get live shrimp, or you just want to run out for a quick afternoon trip or something like that. That's worked for me as well.
Great tips from everybody today.
That's right. Tips all around. Well, man, I know you guys have a really, really busy time of year. I don't know how your bookings are looking, but if folks want to get up with the famous Captain Patrick Garmison, what's the best way to get in touch with you and get on that fine blue wave you got, Hoss?
You can give me a call or shoot me a text at 251-747-1554. If you just want to take a look at the calendar and see what my availability is, then you can go to uglyfishing.com and click the Book Now button. Still have some availability next week and kind of sprinkled throughout the rest of this calendar year. And so if you got some little speckled trout itches you need to scratch, then give me a call, because speckled trout game's been pretty good.
Sounds like it's on, man. Well, I appreciate it as always. Always good to co-host with you, buddy.
It was a treat, man.
It was.
Always.
Good deal. All right, folks, that's going to be another great Alabama saltwater fishing report. You guys, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like us to email you the podcast each week, just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767. Again, just take out your phone and just text the word fishing to 314-665-1767 to subscribe to our email list, and we'll send you the new show each week. We'll talk to y'all next week. You guys keep whacking them.
Keep whacking them, guys.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Daycool Heating and Air, your home performance specialists. Contact them at 251-260-3858 or check them out online at www.daycoolair.com. License number AL07028.
And also brought to you by Test Calibration. Test Calibration is your source for sales and service of diesel turbochargers and fuel injection systems since 1976. Contact them at 800-822-0057 or visit them online at testcalibratindieselandturbo.com. Also brought to you by Advanced Transmission in Spanish Fort. Give the professionals a call who have been trusted on the Gulf Coast for over 25 years at 251-626-6061 or check them out online at www.advanced-transmission.com.
This week's Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Angelo Depaola, The Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, your boating and beach property specialist. Check me out on Facebook at Angelo Depaola Realtor, The Coastal Connection, or call me direct at 850-287-3440.
And also, Great Days Outdoors, the South's finest hunting and fishing magazine. Pick up your copy wherever magazines are sold or check them out at greatdaysoutdoors.com.
Also brought to you by Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks are proud to be your metal roofing headquarters for over 40 years. Save time and money by buying from the most reliable manufacturer on the Gulf Coast. Buy it today, pick it up today. With the addition of their new store in Cantonment, Florida, they now have 8 locations to serve you. Dixie Supply and Baker Metalworks, your metal roofing headquarters.
This week's episode of Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by me, Captain Patrick Garmison in Ugly Fishing. You can shoot me a text or give me a call at 251-747-1554, or you can find us on the internet at www.uglyfishing.com.